Hey Kyle, it's me, Kyle from the past. You know how you always forget how to make stuff between summers making pottery? Well, I got you this year. First up, let's cover bourbon bowls. So with bourbon bowls, we like to make them in batches, So here's a 4-pound log. We're going to go ahead and cut it into sections of 5. Now remember, you had an unfortunate skateboarding accident right before this, so normally you would be able to get 6 out of this 5, but maybe you want them to be a little bit bigger. That's cool. Try to make them as even as possible, but it doesn't entirely matter. Go ahead and just hockey puck them up so that way they're a nice shape for whenever we start throwing later. Alright, so to go over a few things of what you need. Number 1, you need to sit up more straight when you're at the wheel, Kyle, because that posture looks terrible. Well, go ahead and get all your slips out. So you got a nice turquoise, you got yourself a nice orange. Don't worry, we'll cover later how to mix this stuff up for when, again, you eventually forget. But, the random brushes that we have around, don't use that blue again, though. I mean, I guess it worked fine, but it was a little bit too strong, right? Just like a little bit too much. And, of course, you need your normal porcelain slip. That's going to make the basis of everything and make it all look nice and smooth. So one of the things you wanted here, Kyle, is you wanted to see the entire process of making a pot. So we're going to go from beginning to end, starting with a very wide angle just demonstration of the entire throwing process. So first, you get a nice cone up and down. You don't have to cone it up too much, whatever. Who are you trying to impress? So up and down and flatten. This makes it so it's a lot more of that round shape that we're going to need later. And again, remember when you're working on this next year to not go skateboarding in the Memorial parking lot during the one time of year you have the ability to make pottery. Cool? Cool. So there you drop the hole using the sponge. I always like that phrase, drop the hole. There's just something so cool about it. Well, you drop the hole using the sponge, and a lot of people don't like doing that and say you do it wrong. Well, I think they're wrong. Always check the bottom of the pottery to see how thick it is. Generally speaking, it's too thin to begin with, but it's good to know that you at least tried. So this is your first collaring. You're not necessarily pulling the walls up. You're just kind of straightening them up afterwards. Now you're going to get a little wobble. You're going to get a lot of wobble through all this, but generally speaking, it's okay. You're not going to lose it entirely. You got too much power for that, Kyle. Right. And with these bowls, it's important to shape as you lift, right? So it's not just straight up and down. We're pulling at a slight angle. This is going to make it easier for later whenever we're going to start shaping it using our rib. So it's not entirely necessary to use the rib for that part. You have a little metal scraper tool that you got for something else, but it works really well for that. All right, then you take your rib from the bottom, and we're pushing from the inside to the outside. The rib is just kind of catching it on the outside, right? So what we're doing is we're trying to get a shape that's more akin to like a very wide top but narrow base with a sharp angle to it, because that's going to work well for our slips later. So we're really pushing from the inside. It's deceiving whenever you use the rib because it looks like the rib is actually the one doing the work. It's the hand on the inside that's doing the work with that one, right, Kyle? So I'm pushing out gently, catching it on the rib. So the rib is going to bowl it in the bottom and then catch it and try to get straighter sides on the edge. Now, we're not always going to get straight sides here, Kyle, but we want to aim for those straight sides. The reasoning, whenever we do transfers, it's going to work better. When we do our little rib doodad at the end, it's going to work better. When we do slips, it just makes everything better. There's other bowls for other things, and apparently something about bourbon bowls is it makes it so it can smell easier. I don't know. I wonder about half the things I hear and then repeat as gospel, you know? Anyway, Kyle, so what you're going to do now is you're going to start using all those slips. You got to start with a nice porcelain white base. The reason you're using stoneware, the porcelain and the stoneware are not friends. They don't like hang out on weekends, like they see each other at work only. So we need to kind of get them to start vibing together. So the porcelain into the wet clay. Now we can start using the color porcelain. This is that orange, and it looks a little drab right now, but you're always surprised by how bright it actually fires. Maybe next year you should use a little bit more turquoise. I don't know. It was kind of just running out, you know. You got to live with it. So we're kind of doing a blend here. I'm not focusing too much on the blend itself. They blend each other because of the white underneath. It interacts with the orange and the blue. So you're going to take your flexible plastic rib. This is going to be the one that does a lot of that smoothing for you. So it's pretty hard to do this stuff actually without tools, you know. Give yourself a moment to see that nice ombre, you know, that nice fade. Actually, I don't think ombre is the right word. It is a gradient, right? Doesn't ombre mean like to shadow? Someone help with French. I was never good at it. So now we're cleaning up the tools that we're using onto that towel. And then the most important thing with that move right there, Kyle, is you got to just go for it. You're digging in, you're using your inside hand to catch where the tool is going, but just kind of vibe with it, like immediately just go for it. Now take your metal foot tool, and we're going to trim off some excess and put it underneath. Always remember to take Todd's screwdriver for the entire summer to get these blocks out. And again, be careful. They can collapse, whatever. Let's take another look at this real quick. So you're going to cone. Drop the hole. Use plenty of water. It's a renewable resource. We will never run out of it on this planet. When you drop, you pull at the same time. Check the bottom. Again, it's too short than what you actually want. You want about a ½ inch. You normally go 1/4 of an inch. Now we're compressing the clay back and forth. This is going to make it so there's less chance of a crack to happen on the bottom. It still happens from time to time, though. Pulling that first wall up, straightening it as you go. Got a second shaping, pulling wall. Love to see it. Live, laugh, lavender. Now we're shaping. Remember, you're pushing from the inside to the outside. The rib is just catching it to straighten it up. It also gets rid of a lot of that water to make the clay less juicy. What's the word to say there? Juicy. Slip it up with that beautiful porcelain slip that you made. Apply the colors, and you know, you got more colors than that. You can do a whole rainbow. We might cover that on a mug section. And then orange. So it doesn't totally matter the order that you apply those in, but you can do them as different like top or bottom. This one we're going to put on the fancy blue swirl. Now it's not really going to swirl. It's more going to just give you a little bit of a marbling. So now you can see a big difference from using that. Remember, we're just dragging that tool on. We're not really cutting in. This one, jam it in. Inside hands receiving, outside hands stabbing in, and then plop it off. Now, Kyle, sometimes things can go wrong. And I felt it was important to remind you of your failures of the past. Number one, those boards may not fit in there every single time, right? You got to put a little piece of paper. But even when things don't go wrong, I think this little bit will show you that you can still kind of accept and move through it. You just dug in too much. Made the wall too thin and started to collapse. You had to take it out. Some people ask me, why aren't all of your pieces the same? And I would normally say it's because, you know, I'm not a professional potter. I don't measure to a stick, but more it's just weird stuff happens I can't control. Like skateboarding. God. Screwed up my elbow and wrist for 4 months. Anyway. Next day, so you got to cover these very loosely with the bag, but the next day you can cut them off the bat. Try not to let them dry too much like this one does. Ugh. Because then it makes this kind of weird indentation, makes it kind of difficult to trim. Give them the old flipperoonie. Please don't say flipperoonie next year, though. But use both hands, because the amount of these that you crushed in the past and you keep forgetting that you're crushing them is ridiculous. So slips, let's talk a little bit about your slip. So it's porcelain slip. It's porcelain that you crushed up, slaked down, and then sieved through 2 different sieves to get all the blocks out. Now we're going to add some mason stain to it. But first, let's, for no reason at all, just straight up not use a measuring cup and just use my hand to pour it into the measuring device. I have zero clue why I actually did that. That's the only video I recorded of it too, so it's the one I have to use because you're not going to remember, Kyle. So we're measuring at 300 grams here because I like to do 20% of this stain mixed into it, and then, you know, varies from 1 to 1. So we're using a red stain here. 20% of that needs to be the mason stain. That makes sense. But whenever we're doing blue, I mean, I think I did like 11%. When I did black, it was like 7% because it was so black so quick. So just trust your measurements, you know. 20% is the base, but then you can do other things if you really need to. Also, don't forget to wear a mask during this. I mean, I was wearing a mask. You were wearing a mask. But just remember, because this is dry materials floating through the air, it probably just lives inside of your lungs forever. Well, until you probably die. So wear a mask. Give it a good whisking, trying to break all those chunks up. Don't worry about it if you don't get them all broken up. I mean, it's not like pancakes where that's anticipated, but you need to, you can go ahead and just like break them up like normal. We also can use an immersion blender. I decided to not use it this time, and I don't know why. Go ahead and grab your blue scraper. That's going to make it a lot easier to really smooth out a lot of those chunks. You can see some of the porcelain not mixed together. Now, one thing that's important, this does, maybe it doesn't exactly, but I always feel like it is a more consistent, intense tone whenever it sits for like a few days. Maybe the particles in the mason stain are spreading out more, but you know, consider it. I mean, there's a good chance next summer when you're making this, you're going to buy all this at the last minute and have to make it the same day that you're making pottery. So if you can think ahead, please try. Please try. And then you can sieve it again or scoop it right into the thing. It depends on which process we're using, whether we're using the syringe or the brush. Make sure to scoop it all out. I did a terrible job scooping this one out. In the future, make sure to do a better job. I think I went back later and grabbed all that. Red. Be sure to label these things because red sure do look like pink, don't it? All right, so prepare your syringe for the trimming for these bourbon bowls. So you're gonna grab a little bit of that porcelain slip, get a little white. That's kind of your base, you know. It's gonna be used for everything. So you suction it up and then you you wipe the tip off with a towel. A towel gets gross throughout the summer too. All right, and then your colors, you can really do them in any order you want. I mean, you have so many different colors, so just use whatever is available, what you think works, like green, yellow, and black. That works together, you know? Because this green is more like a mint, you know, a nice little mint. And with the yellow becomes like a little radioactive yellow, and then the black is just, you know, there. So you're squeegeeing out from each one, and then it's important to wipe off each time because that stuff gets into the other ones. And at this point, the slip is a lot drier because it's been open for a long time from, you know, using it for like 2 weeks straight. So you're going to squeeze from the bottom. You can see in the bottom, right? There's a lot of air. You want to get rid of that air. And that'll make it so it actually marbles a lot better, and so it doesn't like burp onto your pot. Put your finger over top, give it a little wiggle, a little shake. That's going to really help it marble, Kyle. Look at it already doing it, making a mess. Grab your pot, tap it into place. We don't need a reminder on this. Use the 4 lugs of power to hold it. Some people prefer 3. You're not one of those people, Kyle. You're a 4 lug man. Right, when you're trimming, you want to just get that first little burl off of it, you know? Just kind of visualize where it's going to be. Some people like to draw little lines, and again, you're not one of those people. You just wing it. This pot was a little bit drier than it should have been, so it's kind of chipping off than those beautiful ribbons that you're used to seeing. So we're trying to get a nice deep foot and a pretty flat angled profile to the edge. So what you're doing here is you're really trying to build up the bottom foot part. You're not worried about any like details or anything like that. You really just, because of the slip that you're going to be adding later, is going to obliterate anything underneath. This tool really helps give it a nice sharp edge because we want it to be pretty like 45-degree angle. I mean, it's not, but we would love it. We would love when that happened. And trimming out the center, remember, you left yourself next to no room to do this. So give it a little tap, give it a little listen, you know. Maybe use your ears before your mouth for once. All right, so we're going to go ahead and just wet up the whole area. That'll get rid of the little holes that form from the grit of the grog in the stone. And it'll kind of burnish it and just kind of make it a little bit nicer, you know, like nice. It'll also make it a lot easier when we apply a little bit of porcelain. So when we use a syringe for porcelain later, it wants its friend to hold on to. So we put the porcelain slip down like that, slow the wheel down, and this is going to make it so it adheres a lot better. Trust me, Kyle, last summer you did so much experimentation, and experimentation is a big code word for failure. And things went wrong. So you're going to syringe the slip on there. That's how it's going to marble, and you give it a little tap on the table. You can also bang your hand on the wheel head. That helps because you want it to kind of create these irregular patterns that you can't really do on your own. When you're done, don't touch the bottom. Because the amount of times you've done that and ruined one of these is way too much, Kyle. Let's take another view at this. This is when I kind of messed up. So this syringe it can go in a bunch of different ways. You can do it as bands. You can do it syringe all the way down the side, like one row all the way down the side, but you can do like a band up top, a band at the bottom, and then smash it and it'll move on its own. There's different ways to doing it. You didn't really prefer any one way or the other. And don't worry about that little drip. Don't worry about it. We'll take care of it later. It's a pretty cool pattern though. Let's take another look at one of these. It's important to see multiple viewpoints of this, you know? See, I didn't really like it. You can take it off. It's okay. Squeeze another one on. That yellow will do something underneath. I think we'll take a look at it later, too. And remind yourself, Kyle, you like to do these things every now and then. Take some of those transfers that you got for other pieces. You can cut them out and just kind of lay them face down on the bottom of the pot. Give them a quick little spritz. And for some reason here, you were dabbing them with your finger. You really don't need to do anything. You can just wait. It's fine. Dabbing it with your finger when it's wet is a good chance to smear it. So if you want to smear it, that's a great way to do it, Kyle. You're going to peel it up with a knife, fettling knife. You can use a needle tool, really whatever you have at hand. It's all going to be fine. Some of them can be blurrier than others. Go ahead and spoilers here, but you need to space them out and wrap them up very loosely for like 2 days. The porcelain really is not friends with the stoneware, so it's going to take a while for it to dry. This also causes the foot to get a little bit uneven, so grab yourself a piece of sandpaper and as evenly as you can push it on the sandpaper. It'll knock a lot of the unevenness off. Grab yourself a green scrubby and clean up some of those issues from earlier. There's no real errors that can't be fixed. You know, it's all gonna work out eventually. Make sure to use the green scrubby on the rim of the piece too to get any sort of sharp edges out of there. You know, when you first started making pottery, you never really thought about all the extra things that go into it. Well, anyway, get it bisqued. I don't have a video of it getting bisqued because that's not really super special to look at. Then after it's done being bisqued, you're going to rinse them. Kyle, you like rinsing them under the sink. Just seems to wash away any of the particulates. And don't forget to use the power of the almighty sun to help dry them out. Or you can wait, a day and just glaze them the next day. It's all pretty much fine. Once you got them rinsed, go ahead and put a wax foot on the bottom. We do that because we're terrible at cleaning these things later. Don't forget. And also don't forget a sponge brush. Regular brushes don't work very well with you, Kyle. And a reminder to put them with the bottoms down, because you don't know if there's wax already on that newspaper. It could get on the lip. Bad news, not something you want. If any wax gets in a place you don't want, you're gonna have to re-biscuit again, and that's a whole boring process. For glazing, you're just going to be firing to a cone 6 and using a clear. Now sometimes you get a little fancy, you put like a blue, you put a red on the inside of the bowl, but for the purposes of this, we're just going to be looking at what it's like to put that normal clear on it. Maybe we'll cover how to do red or something like that in a future video. Give it a nice good stir. I should probably time how long I do this, but I really... until it offers less resistance is how I'll phrase it. Does that sound good? Okay. Alright, we fired a cone 6 because this is going to be electric. There's no real point in doing reduction, right, on something like this. It's pretty much just going to fire out. So when you dunk it, go straight down. And then I think I hold it for 5 seconds. We'll count on the next one. So I'm pretty sure I say 1 as I put it down into the bucket, you know? Pull it out and you can just use a sponge to... that nice waxed bottom will repeal the glaze and make your life a lot easier. But let's count on this next one. Let's see how long I actually do it. Okay, so I'd go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, and then done. All right, so we're doing 6. We're doing 6 seconds. So the less you hold it in there, the less that's going to absorb into the pot, right? And you know, don't look at other people's YouTube videos, Kyle. They have completely different glaze chemistries. They may only need to dunk it for 1 second. You know, it's all going to be different. This is what's formulated that works for you through the University of Evansville's ceramics department. All right, so straight up, that one was like 4 seconds, right? I think I base it off of how thin or thick the pot might feel, because I don't want to have it in there as long. Now about loading a kiln. Always remember, Kyle, you're never just loading your own kiln. There's always other people's stuff in there. So you need to take extra special care to take care of it. So the posts, you like to give yourself a little bit of extra room on the sides, you know? Because you don't want to knock that down. It's one thing if you break your own pieces, but man, if you break anybody else's, you're just going to feel like a dog monster, which is not something you want to be, Kyle. Make sure all the pieces go 1 inch apart, and then you stagger the shelves as you load. That creates a better airflow as it gets suctioned out the top through the vent. Don't forget that little guy. All right, you never remember how to do this. So you hit cone fire. You always want to preheat an hour because you can never remember whether you did it right. Cone 6, speed, slow, keep it, enter, hold 8 minutes. Why do we do that? Because Todd told you to. All right, once you're ready, hit start. You hear all those clicks? It'll run through a whole series of clicks. Once you're done, hit review to make sure that it all did what you're supposed to do. And once you feel confident in it, make sure and go around to the back and turn the vent on. This is going to pull air through the whole thing. That's why we staggered those shelves. It makes it so it heats up a lot more evenly because, you know, the elements can be a little bit old. And then when you're done, forget to record a kiln unloading video at all. But take a look at these. I mean, these turn out pretty rad, right? So you can see the mirror really helps show off what happened in the bottom with the marbling. The slip on top works really nicely. The colors are a lot more vibrant, right? With the orange. And yeah, that's really it. That's really all we got to cover with this one. Our next video will probably be about how we make reduction mugs. You know, maybe we'll cover doing transfers. Maybe we'll do some hand-built tumblers. I mean, like, let's go. You do a lot of things, Kyle. You might as well.